Good evening, everybody, and we're delighted to be joined by one of the opposition camp, for the want of a better description, in Aidan Delaney of Southeast Radio. Thanks a million for joining us this evening, Aidan.
Yeah, no problem, Adrian. Glad to be on.
Yeah, it's going to be a big clash, which we'll move on to soon, tomorrow evening, between Treaty United and Wexford FC at the Markets Field. It would be great to have Wexford back. It'll be the first competitive opponent at home in the Markets Field for the newly formed Treaty United. Before we get on to the match specifically, Aidan, what's the feeling like around Wexford FC in terms of their expectations and hopes for the 2021 season as a whole?
To be quite honest with you, Adrian, it's kind of been the same that it's always been. Nobody's expecting anybody in this team to be pulling up trees. To be quite honest, we finished second last year. We're just looking for a bit of progress here in the Southeast. We know that there's plenty of potential in this squad, that there's a lot of young players come in. So basically, everybody's just looking for a bit of progress this year, to get a few more points on the board and to just really put a Wexford stamp on this league, because it hasn't really had it since Shane Keegan left, really. And Wexford were, First Division champions just 6 years ago, but that seems like an awful long time ago now. So really, people in the Southeast are very accommodating in this team. They know that, any bit of progress, a couple of wins on the board will fly you right up the table. So there's not going to be any First Division title here in Wexford, but, just to get into mid-table would be a dream, really.
Yeah, when we were speaking on our Sport Limerick soccer podcast that we have weekly, we did a bit of a prediction list, and we did have Wexford second bottom across the board. Aidan, sorry, excuse me. So it's interesting to see. Will they progress, because it's going to be difficult in this division, because it's been touted, obviously, the First Division this year as being one of the most competitive in years. You obviously had Shelburne coming down, you've Galway having real expectations going straight back up, you've Cork City and the like. So as you were saying, maybe the measure of progress for Wexford will be picking up more points rather than flying up the table as such.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think one change to this season has been that Wexford has a core of the team that was there last year. Generally, when the First Division ends, a lot of players go back to Dublin or go back to wherever they came from, and Wexford are left picking up the pieces, starting again. So the one thing that's been positive about this off-season is that plenty of the players from last year have decided to stick around. So you definitely have a core of last year's team. You still have Tom Murphy in goal. Dan Tobin has stayed on as captain. You've got Conor Crowley in midfield. Jack Doherty is still there to score a couple of goals. So you definitely have that spine of a team there from last year, and a couple of youngsters coming in from the likes of Shelburne, coming from the Sunderland Academy, from Cabinteely. Plenty of those lads are coming to supplement the side that we had from last year. So there's definitely a feeling that this might be a stronger squad than last year's squad. But as you say, everybody has strengthened. So Wexford might be up a level, but everybody else has gone up a level too. So Wexford might stay where they are.
Yeah, one of your former coaches is actually one of our regular contributors in Noel O'Connor.
Yes, of course.
He's obviously with us, and he is still very close to a lot of people in Wexford. When we were looking through the squad, that certainly was something we picked up on, and Tommy Barrett, the Treaty manager, has obviously mentioned it as well, although he'd obviously be trying to downplay expectations on his own side,
of course, yeah,
and build up the opposition. But you have the likes of Luke Turner coming in there from Aberdeen, and there has been players coming in from, without naming them all, I have example Alex O'Hanlon, for instance, as well.
Yes.
And they've all come from very good clubs. So, there is a feeling around the league in general that they're going to the likes of Ferry Carrick Park. They're certainly not going to get it easy this season, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And it is, these are players with potential. Maybe they haven't spent that much time in the league, but, there is experience there at the same time. Lads who have won trophies on underage. You've got Luke Turner, who has experience of Scottish football. Jack Connolly was over in Sunderland. Tom Murphy was over in Everton. Alex O'Hanlon was over in Liverpool. So these lads know what it takes to play at the top level. They've just come home now. And the real problem is for Wexford that there hasn't really been this consistency of performance for quite a while. So again, taken into the Cabo game from the first weekend, I mean, there was plenty to be positive about there, and then plenty of opening night jitters as well, I would say. Particularly the first goal was, a free header in the box, given the Cabinteely captain, acres of room. And, those kind of problems have been sort of carried over from last year. So you'd be hoping that Wexford will be able to sort of minimise the mistakes and accentuate their positives and hopefully get a couple more points on the board.
Yeah, that's something I definitely picked up on, Aidan. I did watch the Wexford and Cabinteely game last week. I watched it back. I didn't watch it live, but it was certainly interesting to see, and probably worrying for Brian O'Sullivan to see how easy it was for Cabinteely to win headers in the box. It's funny, obviously Wexford's goal did come from a set piece themselves in Luke Turner, but they were very sloppy in terms of their defending, in terms of in the defensive part of the game in the box. Against Cabinteely, and Cabinteely did have chances to score a couple more from set pieces as well, so that will be a big worry, I suppose, for Brian O'Sullivan, and probably a target for Tommy Barrett as well.
Yeah, I spoke to Brian after the game, and he was very disappointed that the 2 goals came from set pieces, because that's something you can work on. And I suppose that's the one positive, is that you can kind of get those mistakes out of the way in week 1. If you start to see them in week 2, week 3, week 4, something has to change. So I think that's something they'll definitely have worked on. Particularly the second goal was very poor. It was one of those free kicks which was in the middle of nowhere. It shouldn't have been a free kick at all, really. And it's one of these goals that bounces in off the post. Nothing really the goalkeeper can do. And, suddenly you're 2-0 down with whatever it was, 50 minutes on the board. So Wexford were always facing an uphill battle after that. I think they did show that that little bit of steel and determination, which probably hasn't been there for a while. They got themselves back into the game, and for the last kind of 25 minutes, maybe nearly half an hour, they were probably the better side and probably deserved to get something from that game, I would feel anyway. But unfortunately, Cabinteely are a very experienced team. Pat Devlin knows how to set up a side. I know Brian was very disappointed really with some of the time wasting tactics and all that kind of stuff. And the worst thing about playing in Ferry Carrig is without the ball boys there, the ball can go nearly out onto the N11, so you're waiting for ages for it to come back. So I think the one thing I think is missing from this Wexford squad is that kind of experienced head, somebody in his 30s, somebody who's been around the league for years really, to just settle the side down a little bit, because they did start to nip at the Cabinteely lads. And again, this Wexford team is full of youngsters, full of lads who don't have that necessary experience to sort of deal with these kind of games. And I think that's something that's going to be a big problem for Wexford going forward, is that they don't have somebody who can just calm things down a bit, get their foot in the ball, settle the young lads, and help get Wexford get back into the game. But it's a new challenge coming up against Treaty next week, this coming week, so I think they'll be certainly up for the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing that both those teams will have in common, Aidan, and that's a game. It's certainly a massive game, because no matter what either manager says, both of these managers will be targeting 3 points from this game. Very important, Wexford will obviously see Treaty coming in as a new team, and they would certainly be targeting, because they do have inexperience as well. There is a few players now, let's be honest, with Treaty in comparison with Wexford, that you've got the likes of Mark Ludden and Jack Lynch, who were with Galway last year, and play prominent roles in their playoff push under John Caulfield. So I suppose we can't use that excuse as much as Wexford, like in terms of experience, but it's certainly a game that both will be targeting. And if either wins it makes it a very good start, in comparison with whoever loses will probably be feeling, oof, this could be a longer season ahead than expected.
Yeah, one positive for Wexford this week is Dan Tobin, the captain, is coming back in. I imagine he'll slot in at right back, coming in for Carl Fitzsimons, who, for me personally, didn't really match the intensity of the game last week. It just kind of looked a bit lost. So I think that'll certainly give Wexford a bit of an outball as well, somebody to just calm everybody down and put their foot on the ball, really. So I think there's definitely positives to take from last week for Wexford. Paul Fox looked really dangerous. I thought when Jack Doherty came on, he, gave Wexford a different attacking outlook, really. Success Edigan came on. He looked a bit more lively than Kyle Robinson, who started the game. So there's definitely positives to take. And I think Wexford will be delighted that this is the game that they have next coming up. Obviously, Marcus Field is somewhere that they haven't been for quite a while, but it's a place with a storied history, to be fair. But to actually go there and take on a team who might be in a similar position to Wexford, I think this is probably the game that they'll be targeting. And look, they'll be happy enough to nick a 1-0 win and get back down to Wexford and hopefully build for the rest of the season.
Yeah, we were saying earlier on that Marks Field is obviously a really modern stadium now. If the facilities are quite good, that away teams probably wouldn't mind travelling for a day out at Marks Field. It's not like maybe the Wimbledon back in the 80s, early 90s. Maybe something that Treaty might want to make it on the pitch though is a real tough battle, because and try and make the Marks Field a fortress. Actually, while I think of it actually as well, I noticed from the game against Cabinteely that it seemed to be quite ambitious formation-wise from Brian O'Sullivan, Aidan. Quite fluid at times, like there was 3 centre-backs at all times, but sometimes it looked like it was like a 3-5-2. But there was a lot of times in the game where it looked like it was shaped as like a 3-4-3 almost, with Paul Fox right up there too. Is that the type of ambition that Brian O'Sullivan has shown as manager throughout, or is this a more recent development?
It has been a bit more recent. I think Brian is somebody who's very pragmatic. He'll use whatever is at his disposal. And I think he's discovered really that he does have a very strong defence there. Given the sort of defensive errors last week, it didn't look like that. But I think Paul Cleary and James Carroll are certainly certainly 2 men who have been there before, who know what Wexford are about, who can form a partnership there. And particularly with Luke Turner coming in, or somebody like Alex O'Hanlon coming in, it does give you that little bit more, defensive solidity that you can go on. And Paul Fox was starting on the right. He popped up on the left. He was certainly sort of buzzing about, making himself busy. Again, when you have somebody like Conor Crowley in midfield, I'm a big fan of Conor Crowley. He can be a bit, I don't want to say mindless at times, but sometimes he makes the wrong decisions. But somebody like that can actually, anchor your midfield a bit, and it allows, Carl Manahan or whoever is beside him to sort of bomb forward a bit. And definitely, something has to change at Wexford. And if it is a tactical innovation that can get, your best players on the field, I'm sure Brian will be more than happy to do that. I think with Dan Tobin coming back in this week, it'll probably be a more static back 4, I would imagine. But I'd say Brian will, use what he has at his disposal and maybe adapt the team to the game if it's not going their way.
Yeah, and I know for a fact you guys in Wexford would probably have seen that one of our more creative players here in Treaty United, Sean McSweeney, is suspended for the game. He got sent off for 2 buckle offences last week against Bray, which will be a boost for Wexford as well, Aidan, because even though obviously Treaty showed a lot of grit and determination, like we spoke about during the week, got a great 0-0 draw, showed great defensive capabilities, we didn't show anything as such in the attacking third of the field, and we're also missing one of our 2 maybe of our more creative players now in Sean McSweeney, and then you have Joel Kustra and last year's striker for Athlone, Dean George, all missing. That all goes in favour of Wexford as well, I suppose, as you mentioned, with their captain Dan Tobin also coming back into their team.
Yeah, so Dean is obviously somebody we'd know here at Wexford too. He spent a couple of years down here too. So yeah, I think that's a problem that both sides have really, is that they're both missing this kind of 15-20 goal a season striker. As I mentioned, Kyle Robinson has come down from Pats there. Somebody who knows how to score at underage level, but the first division is a bit of a step up, and he looked a little lost at times against Cabinteely. They have 2 massive centre backs, and he was being bullied off the ball a little bit. I think if Wexford can get the ball down and sort of get the ball in behind, there was one attack down the right hand side where Kyle managed to get it 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper and was unlucky not to do better. So I think definitely I'd say both teams are going to struggle to probably score in this game. I did catch a little bit of the Bray game, and I was very impressed with Sean McSweeney. And to be honest, when he went off that time, I feared for you a little bit. I thought Bray might get the foot in the ball and actually kick on from that game. But definitely Treaty showed that they have a defensive solidity there, and Wexford will find it difficult to break that down. So I'd say if you were a betting man, probably a 0-0 draw is probably the safest result you can get. But both teams will definitely go out to win it too.
I'm delighted to hear that, Aidan, because normally when someone predicts a 0-0 draw, it ends up in a 3-2 or a 4-3 thriller. So we could be.
It can happen too. There was plenty of those results in pre-season for both sides, I believe. So
yeah, absolutely. And then obviously, I suppose if anything, the result for Treaty against Bray shows you that the type of division we're looking at here, and that anyone can pick points off each other. I know we said it's going to be tougher, and you will have the likes of Shelburne and Galway, like we already mentioned as well, full-time setups who are going to have that advantage in terms of player recovery and the likes. But it just shows you, like on the day, Bray, in my opinion, didn't, even when Treaty went down to 10 men, didn't create an awful lot of clear-cut chances. Brendan Kavanagh went close to a free kick. There was a couple of maybe few scares from crosses, but there wasn't much in it. And it just shows you that it will be a division where, every game is unpredictable, to be honest.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's why this kind of game is so important for a team like Wexford. You have to beat the teams around you if you want to, get yourself further up the pitch. Because look, going to a place like Tucker Park or Turner's Cross or even out to Galway is going to be a tough place to get any points. So Wexford will know that every single home game is going to be important, and to take points off of the Cabinteelys and the Treaty Uniteds and the Cove Ramblers, like, this is the games these should be winning. And if they want to make any progress at all, these are the games they have to target.
Yeah, definitely. Last week was an interesting start. You obviously had the predicted top two in Galway and Shelburne meeting at in DC Park. Glenn McCauley was sent off early. I actually was quite impressed myself with Shelburne before he was sent off, but also after he was sent off. And to be honest with you, Galway seemed to lack the cutting edge in the final third, which is something we kind of flagged as it might be a problem for them for the year. There was a lot of maybe sidewards lateral passes, couldn't penetrate between the lines. There was a lot, crosses from deep where there was very little angle for the strikers or the wingers to attack the ball. And I thought, as one of my colleagues said to me, any question of Shelburne not being up for the fight in terms of, we all know they have great football ability, but not being up for the fight in this division, that was quashed fairly quick on Friday night.
Yeah, I thought so. There was a lot of people who were, I think, wrongly targeting Ian Morris and the Shelburne setup there, and being a bit harsh about, obviously it wasn't a great season last year coming down to the first division, where I think plenty of these players in the Shelburne squad will feel like they're Premier Division players. They don't feel like this is their level. So I definitely think they'll definitely show a fight and determination. Like you, I was a little disappointed with Galway. We've been hearing all throughout, I think every single person has tipped them to at least be in the top two. I thought John Caulfield probably could have done a bit more to just make an impact on that game. I think he was more than happy to just, it was the opening night, probably the toughest game they'll have all season, really. And they were probably happy enough to just take the points and go home with it. So I definitely think there's more to come from this Galway side, but plenty more to come from Shelburne too.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I was one of those that you've mentioned that put the pressure on Ian Morris in before the season started, but that's probably because of my bias and envy towards Shelburne for the many years of winning Premier Division titles when we were younger. But on another point I meant to say to you, obviously, about Cabinteely, I actually pipped Cabinteely to finish bottom due to the upheaval they've had. Obviously, the trouble that both clubs had last year in terms of the ineligibility of a player and Yeah, absolutely. So we know the trouble, and there was a bit of spice to that as well. But I have picked Cabinteely to finish bottom, but they do have some wily old foxes, if you want to call it, where we've got Pat Devlin there, we've got Eddie Gormley there, you've also got Collie O'Neill involved in the coaching as well. Do you think from watching them that there was any signs that because of their Dublin base and likes as well that they will be able to finish higher up the table and then maybe we'll say 10th or 9th?
Yeah, like you, when I saw the fixture list come out and I saw, Cabinteely come down to Ferrycarrig on the opening weekend, I kind of slapped my hands together and thought, that should be an easy 3 points for Wexford and a good way to start off. So I think to lose to them was very disappointing, and you could hear that in Brian O'Sullivan's voice when they were coming off the field. So I think that they scored early in that game and, had the wit and determination to just make sure that they held on to that. The second goal was almost a bonus for them. They didn't really contribute that much to the game. I thought Wexford were doing most of the attacking, and like you say, there's wily foxes there in Cabinteely, so they'll definitely take points off of other sides. I still think that Wexford would definitely sort of target themselves to finish above Cabinteely and, even above maybe the likes of Cove Ramblers or that too. So Cabinteely are definitely a strong side, but when I saw the likes of Paul Fox coming down to Wexford, I thought he was probably the best player on the field and somebody they'll definitely miss going forward, Cabinteely. So I think there's definitely there'll be some tough trips out to Stradbrook for a lot of teams, but I do think Cabinteely will probably struggle when it comes to away games against the more top four sides.
Yeah, I always picture our manager Tommy Barrett when he was walking through the Stradbrook pitch the last time I think when Limerick FC played there. and Blackrock had been playing there the night before. There was bobbles all over the pitch. It was, but you can see how they will definitely pick up points maybe at home, because it will be a tough venue for teams. Might not suit Cabinteely though, all the same as well, I suppose. With the likes of Kieran Marty Waters and other players we could mention there, so like we can say that it'll be tough, I suppose, but it'll be tough on the home team if the pitch. But anyway, on another note, and maybe a final note, it's superb, I suppose. There was obviously teething problems with the LOI TV over the weekend in certain grounds anyway, but it is super for supporters, players even, and managers alike, that you can go back if you want to watch games. You can watch them live. It's a superb service, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have it myself, and I know you're probably in the same boat.
Yeah, so I was actually at the game for the Wexford Cabinteely game, but I hear there wasn't too many problems with the stream there. So, and to be fair to the lads at Wexford, and to be fair to the lads in the media team in Wexford, the likes of Anthony and Ronan and them, they've always been putting in an awful lot of effort, even when it was just through Facebook or just through Twitter Live or whatever. They've definitely put the procedures in place, and I was glad to see that they were able to hang on when LOI TV came in, because Ronan is somebody who's definitely put his stamp on the Wexford games, and people tune in to hear Ronan's take on the game almost as much as watching the game. So and look, for Wexford, we have this reputation of, we don't celebrate our own. There was only ever going to be the likes of 100, 200 people at Ferry Carrick Park, even on a normal day, if COVID wasn't around at all. So but I do think Wexford probably missed those 100 people, because they are hardcore fans. They are the ones that are there in the wind and the rain and everything like that. So I think that's probably about a bonus for Wexford as well, going to Markets Field. I know, in a normal year, football back in Limerick, people would be dying to get down, and I've seen those lovely commemorative tickets they have there as well. They look absolutely amazing, and they'd be a collector's item for people. They'd be a collector's item for people for years to come, so I think that's probably a bonus that Wexford are going up there. It's only going to be the coaches and everything like that, so definitely it's with the streaming and everything like that, you're able to follow the games, and I think it makes the first division look a bit more professional. It looks a bit more, people will take it more seriously, because you and I are sitting here talking about the games now. This probably wouldn't have happened 5-10 years ago, so it's a positive step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I leave you go, Aidan, we've obviously had a massively divisive situation in Limerick senior soccer for many years, and we've operated under different guises, been in different stadiums. The list goes on. I have to say, one thing I would say is I do commend the stability at Wexford. I know that you've got to the Premier Division, obviously got relegated through the playoffs again, suffered that heartache, but there's never been maybe, I suppose, massive highs, and maybe you would say there has been a few lows, but it's been fairly stable for Wexford since their inception, maybe in 2007. And that is one thing I would say. But there was a kind of a bit of a mad situation in pre-season where we had I think it was Yola FC who came out to try and get involved in League of Ireland football, and actually tried to effectively take Wexford FC's place, and also wanted to use Ferry Carrick Park, which I found absolutely insane, really. What was it like down there in pre-season? I know it was quashed fairly quick, the interest, but it must have been pretty absurd, really.
Yeah, it was definitely a strange one. As you mentioned, we've only had League of Ireland soccer in this county for 14 years, but Wexford soccer in general has been very strong over the years, because, even before we had the League of Ireland team, we had Mick Wallace in charge of our county team, and they were winning titles, all over. And that's where we get the Torino influences and that kind of stuff. So there's definitely the talent here in Wexford. And one thing you'll notice watching the Wexford FC team for the last couple of years is the lack of homegrown players, the local Wexford lads on the team, which is, it's coming down to sort of off the field issues and personalities clashing and that kind of thing. Because, even when you look at junior soccer here in Wexford, we have North End United, who are often up in the sort of Leinster Junior Stakes, the FAI Cup Stakes. You've got the likes of Gorey Rangers, you've got the likes of Cortown Hibs, Shamrock Rovers here in town, and Enniscorthy. So there's definitely the talent here. There's just a bit of a personality clash, and that kind of came up with Yola FC as well. It's still quite shrouded in mystery, really. There's a couple of lads from the junior soccer section got together, decided to put forward a proposal for a League of Ireland club, as you called it, Yola FC. they were looking for a bit more of a Wexford focus, because there is this perception, and rightfully so, in times really, that the Wexford team doesn't represent the Wexford area, that there's an awful lot of players coming down from Dublin and Carlow and the likes of that. So it was quite a noble endeavour, I suppose, from the lads, but it was never really going to fly. I mean, if a team can only take in 200 down in Ferrycarrig Park, having two teams playing there wasn't going to, it was going to split that audience rather than grow it. So it was never really a runner. But I think it did sort of promote this bit of a look back for Wexford soccer to see, why is it the case that plenty of soccer players in this county are able of playing at a League of Ireland level and haven't taken that step up. And, that's why we've been focusing in Southeast Radio on a young man, Evan Farrell. He's 17. He's come through the academy there. He was actually a ball boy behind the goal when Danny Furlong scored that record-breaking goal in 2015. So somebody who's steeped in the history of the club. So, he's coming on to the first division, the first team squad now at the minute, 17, hopefully the future for Wexford FC, and has told me that, he doesn't want to play anywhere else. So, if we could even get one local player on the team that would manage to, inspire maybe a couple of other lads to, not just play junior soccer, to try yourself at League of Ireland level, and hopefully, we'll see plenty more Wexford players in the Wexford team.
Yeah, it's funny because I hadn't really thought about it until you mentioned it, because I had always seen Wexford as a team that did produce a lot of locals, because from the very start, we'll say back in 2007, but that's obviously changed with time, and it can do. I know it's happened here in Limerick as well. I mean, you look at our former owner, Pat O'Sullivan. If you think about it, we had a local teams for years until maybe 2008, 2009. When Pat came in, we brought in Pat Scully as manager, and all of a sudden we had Stephen Bradley, Joe Gamble, Dennis Behan, all these lads playing for us, and it was not such a Limerick team anymore, even though there was 3 or 4 lads particularly that were still there. It's about what people want, I suppose, Aidan, isn't it? Because you want there is a situation there where supporters want, and locals included, will say, "Oh, I'm not going to watch that; they're going to lose." But then they don't want, players from other counties playing also. But, you have to be patient when you do have locals playing in the team like we have now with Treaty, that results aren't going to come thick and fast. And you do have to give them time and actual support, and not be totally reliant on results.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's what we all want. We want to see Wexford players playing at the top level, because, we have had the likes of a Kevin Doyle who's reached the ultimate, playing for the Republic of Ireland. And, there's plenty of players who I think definitely in the next couple of years could reach that level as well. They just need to have an outlet. And, Kevin himself had to go play for Cork City because, he was coming up at the wrong time, and to have a Wexford in the county now at the minute means that there is, that outlet for players should they decide to. And as I mentioned, there's plenty of players here who are more than happy to play at the junior soccer level. They can win titles and trophies at that level. But you'd hope that more of them might take the step up. We've seen the likes of Chris Kenny come from Shamrock Rovers. He played in the league for quite a while. John Pear, a Moyne Rangers player, he played for Wexford FC for a bit as well. So, it's good to have that pathway. And hopefully, we've seen the likes of Darragh O'Connor. He was playing for the team last year. He's gone over to the Leicester City under 23s. So, you've got the likes of Kevin O'Connor who's come from the county, somebody like Aidan Delaney, so there's definitely Wexford players who have the talent to play in the League of Ireland, and hopefully they would choose to do that for a Wexford team rather than, going abroad or going up to Dublin.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And again, our thanks for you, Aidan, to join us tonight. It was brilliant to have you on and have the opposition perspective. As such, obviously we won't be seeing you at the Markets Field, unfortunately, due to work commitments. But it's it promises hopefully to be an interesting game anyway. And obviously we hope to be in touch with you and Southeast Radio throughout the year, and maybe we'll meet again for the return fixtures.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to it. And look, I'm just hoping that it's a good game. I'm hoping Wexford put their foot on the ball and challenge Treaty a little bit, because I think they're still a little sore from that loss to Cabinteely, and this is a game they'll certainly be targeting right from the start of pre-season. So I think it's going to be, as I mentioned, it might be a 0-0 because of the lack of striking options on both sides. But as you mentioned, these two teams, they'll be going at it hard, and maybe a 3-2 isn't outside the realms of possibility either.
Yeah, hopefully, definitely in the home way anyway. And hopefully I'm sending you a text message tomorrow evening. But absolutely. Thanks for joining us in. Thank you.
No problem.
Preview.